The Straw King, Chapter 14. Early the next morning, Glinda sent a flock of gilded songbirds, literally covered in gold leaf, to the forest of the beast to tell the lion that she and the Scarecrow were making their own move to the Emerald City. "I've invited them to the battle, but I'm sure they'll be over by the time they arrive. They can join us for your coronation instead, dear," she said to Ozma, stroking the girl's dark hair. "My coronation? You didn't think you'd just sit on the throne and that would be that. Of course you'll have a coronation. It'll be the grandest party Oz has ever seen. We'll order you dozens of new dresses and bucket loads of jewels. You can pick out your favorite things to eat, and we'll serve them at the banquet, and there will be dancing all night long." "But if Ginger has hurt so many people, no one will feel like dancing," Ozma said. "Wouldn't it be better to make sure everyone in the city is taken care of instead of focusing on a party?" "Nonsense!" Glinda exclaimed. "Everyone will want to be distracted from their troubles, and they'll be so excited to have a new queen they won't even think of Ginger anymore. You'll see I'm right. Remember, I know much more than you do about ruling a kingdom." "You're right," Ozma said. "You're much wiser than I am when it comes to these things." Still, the Scarecrow thought he saw a glimmer of doubt in her eyes. Glinda was treating their assault on the Emerald City as if it were a grand picnic. She sent Ozma to her chambers to get ready. "Make sure you pick out a lovely dress, dear. We can't have anyone seeing you look less than your best," she called after Ozma, and then brought the Scarecrow up to her own room, where she spent a long time conjuring up various battle outfits before settling on a fitted hot pink bodysuit with amethyst-edged metal plating on the breastbone. The Scarecrow glanced up at the sky, where the sun was already high. "Aren't we leaving soon?" he inquired. "It's a long journey to the Emerald City." Glinda yawned. "Not when you have magic," she said. "We'll be there in no time. Don't be such a stick-in-the-mud, Scare." At last, after adjusting her makeup and eating another ice cream sundae, she was ready. Once Glinda decided to get along, she didn't waste a moment. In no time at all, she had assembled her troops in front of her palace. Ozma, contrary to what Glinda had suggested, was wearing a practical clothes for the journey. She had on a plain, unassembled dress, and her hair was bound to up tightly neat in a bun. Glinda gave her a disapproving look, but said nothing about her clothes. "Now then," Glinda said brightly, "is everybody ready? Ozma, I'm going to need your help. Moving an army is a job too big for one witch." Ozma nodded, and Glinda took one of her hands. "When I give you the word, join your magic with mine. Don't worry about what to do with it. I'll direct you." Ozma nodded again. The Scarecrow tried not to show it, but he was impressed. Glinda was indeed powerful, far more than she'd let on. He'd never heard of a witch strong enough to move so many people before, even with help. "I've never been in a battle before," Ozma said worriedly to the Scarecrow. "Have you?" The Scarecrow nodded. "What was it like?" She took his free hand. Once again the Scarecrow felt sorry for the poor girl. She was no match for the likes of Glinda, or for what faced them at the palace. He thought of all the bloodshed he'd seen in the last few days. He was getting used to plotting, but he'd never get used to all that death. "You'll do fine," he told Ozma. She was satisfied with that answer, although he didn't know if it was the truth. Still holding hands, Glinda raised Ozma's arm, and her soldiers began to glow with an eerie pink light. The Scarecrow prepared himself for the strange feeling of magical flight. At least they didn't have to go through all that wall this time. The ground dropped away from them, and a thick, dark fog poured in around them. "We're going a different way this time, since there are so many of us," Glinda said in the darkness. Ozma squeezed his hand tightly, and he squeezed back in what he hoped was a reassuring way. He couldn't see anything in the pitch-black world Glinda had brought them to, but he could feel that they were moving very quickly. Ozma was gripping his hand hard enough to cut off his circulation, and he was grateful he didn't have any. Still, her small hand in his made him feel something not in his head, but in his chest, where his heart should have been. She trusted him. When he felt the surge of magic that he wondered what the fuss was all about. He did not love it like the witches did. He did not chase it like the wizard did. He felt the power, but it meant less to him somehow. The journey through the darkness somehow seemed to last forever and no time at all. "Hold on, everyone," Glinda called out cheerfully. The Scarecrow felt himself plunging downward. Ozma squeaked in surprise. Suddenly the darkness lifted, and he hit solid ground with a thump that jarred his stuffing. All around him, Glinda's soldiers were adjusting their armor and forming military ranks, unfazed by the journey. They were standing outside the gates of the Emerald City. This time, the gates were closed. "Now that's what I call a surprise entrance. They're very well trained, aren't they?" Glinda asked smugly. "Indeed," agreed the Scarecrow, wondering what use Glinda could possibly have for a trained army. How long had she plotted to put Ozma on the throne? Would she have disposed him by force if Ginger hadn't come along to waylay her plans? Somehow, he didn't doubt it. It was more and more obvious how ruthless Glinda was underneath the pretty feminine exterior. Had she had more evil thoughts in mind when she sent the lion and his beast into battle? Had she hoped they would be killed? The Scarecrow hoped his friend was still safe. Even at the end of the battle, the lion had been loyal to him at no benefit to himself. That was more than he could say for Glinda. "How will we get in now?" the Scarecrow asked, eyeing the tightly shut gates. "I can't imagine Ginger will just let us in." "She doesn't have to," Glinda said airily. She let go of Ozma's hand, wiggling her fingers, and flicked them dismissively at the gates. A sizzling bolt of lightning struck the solid, heavy wood, splintering it into pieces. "Go get 'em, girls," she ordered her soldiers. As one, her army pulsed through the ruined gates and marched in unison down the road of yellow brick that led to the Emerald Palace. The Scarecrow, Ozma, and Glinda let the ranks of girls march past, and then fell into step behind them. The city was still deserted, but it didn't give him the same eerie sense of being watched. This time, the Scarecrow felt sure Ginger didn't know they were coming. This time, they'd be protected. If only the lion and even Lulu had that guarantee. Did people you cared about always have to get hurt? Glinda was clearly the wrong person to ask, but he wondered. He liked power, but he wasn't so sure yet about the consequences. If they'd surprised Ginger, it wasn't by much. By the time Glinda's army reached the palace, Ginger's own soldiers were pouring out of the palace doors, pistols at the ready. Ginger herself leaped from a second-floor balcony, landing lightly on her feet and brandishing her own gun. Glinda's soldiers raised their glittering swords. Time stood still in the moment before the two armies met.